One of the most popular genres on Etsy is pet portraits, but it's not underserviced. So I'm not saying that in this video. There's 247,000 results when I type in pet portraits. When I go to cat portraits, I get 75,000 results, and dog portraits even more with 134,000 results. So the big question is there space in this genre of pet portraits for you? And I think the answer is yes. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 examples of how you can differentiate yourself on places like Etsy, and you can sell either print-on-demand products or digital products, printables. They're fun to do as well, and you can make some really good money if you can differentiate yourself in this niche. Let's jump in. Now, if you're a successful painter or if you're a comic book artist, then drawing pet portraits can be a lucrative way to make a good side income. So here's an example of a comic book cover that I got commissioned by an artist that does Archie professionally. So that was pretty cool. And then here's an oil painting that I was given as a gift, and it's an oil painting that's a real oil painting. Somebody actually painted it by hand. There's definitely ways you can make money. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about more print on demand and more graphic design capabilities. So you don't have to be a world-renowned artist in order to make a decent income as a side business doing pet portraits. So there's 5 examples that I'm going to jump into on here. And the first one is taking a cat's or a dog's head and putting it on a body. So here's an example. So we've got an oil painting, and then you're going to take that public domain picture and you're going to stick a cat or a dog's head on it. This is a very easy way to make a funny and endearing pet portrait. This does not take a lot of work. So to make the head on the body portrait, it's pretty easy. You can grab your stock photo pretty much anywhere, Wikipedia, open access at the Met. So here's an example of open access at the Met, and I'll put this link in the video description below. You just want to make sure this open access is checkmarked. That means that everything that's going to be returned in the search results is public domain. So I'm going to type in here Napoleon, and then from here I get 1,000 results. I'm going to select my object type. I'm going to scroll on down, and I'm going to go to paintings, of which there's only 121. So you could use any of these paintings. This is a cool one here that's got his little face, and there's another one here with his face. So you could pick different types of portraits. Now, the more famous you can pick, typically the better. So here's the one that was in the example. This is somebody who served Napoleon. And so I'm just going to use this picture. So this is public domain. So it says here down at the bottom, and I'm going to click the little download button, and that's going to give me a pretty high res picture here that I can then just simply right click and I can save the image. So it's very high res. And then the idea behind it is you're going to crop out the head and you're going to stick a cat's face on there. Here's another easy way to get photographs. You can go to Wikimedia, not Wikipedia, Wikimedia, and then you can type in Napoleon Bonaparte. So I just Googled Wikimedia Commons Napoleon, and this came up. And as I scroll down, you're going to see a whole bunch of images here that you can then use. I'll just open these up in a new tab. So we can see here, this is public domain. As we scroll on down, this will say it's public domain. This work is in the public domain. Almost like virtually everything in Wikimedia is public domain. So if you see it in Wikimedia, you can use it. So here you can just select on whatever the original file is. That gives you a nice high res picture that you can then use. Very famous painting. Here's another one, slightly different. Another one slightly different. And then here's the one that you could use as well with his face. There's lots of different options that you can use. And the more outrageous with the costumes and the pageantry, typically the better, because you're sticking a ridiculous cat or dog face on there, which makes it look even better. Okay, so I'm just using my version of Photoshop that's pretty old. And if you're using Affinity Photo or whatever graphics design software you use, that's great. So this is not strictly speaking a technical walkthrough, but I just want to show you really quickly how this is done. It's relatively straightforward. So I've just got a picture. I add a new layer in. I'm going to then put my cat picture over top of it. So here's my cat picture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just remove out the cat's body. And so I'm just going to take my brush, make it bigger, and I'm going to just kind of slice this off here. And obviously I'm doing this very quickly for the purposes of this walkthrough, but you would obviously take your time. When I do pet portraits for people, typically it would take between an hour and 2 hours to really make one that I'm very happy with. You would really want to make the details a lot better, specifically the whiskers around the face. So I'm going to zoom in here quite a bit. And then you're going to take this cat face and you're going to put it over top. Now what you want to do with the cat face, just going to make that a little bit better there. What you want to do with the cat face is basically change the opacity of it so you can see through it. So what you want to do now is, using your judgment, make the cat's face sort of the same size as the human's face, but again, it's going to be based on what you want. So I try to typically match the eyes up. You can see sort of the eyes are poking through. In hindsight, I should have left more of the cat down below. So I'm actually just going to redo this, but I'm going to edit it so you'll see it. So here I've got the full cat now stuck on, and I'm going to now just move the opacity right down so that it's there sort of. But what I really want to do is I want to take the cat's body and I want to make sure that the actual jacket is going to cover up a lot of it. So now I'm going to make this a bit smaller. I'm going to put it right like that. Again, I'm going to try to match up the eyes, but I want to make sure that my cat's neck is extending down into the blue. And we can see that's a bit better. Okay, so now I'm really going to zoom in. Okay, so now what you want to do is take your eraser brush and make it quite small. And then you want to basically carve out right along where the collar is. So you want to go nice and slow and make sure that you've got that collar accounted for. So I'm going to do just cutting out the collar on it. Okay, so now I'm just going to change the opacity back. So we can see now it's like the collar is now covering some of the cat, which is what we want. So it's a bit of an optical illusion there. Now you can also change the brush in Photoshop in Affinity Photo. You can change the hardness of the brush right down to 0. And you'd want to do that to sort of make it like hair like that. See on the left-hand side, it just sort of makes it soft like that. So you can actually play around with that. Now at the top, you'll notice there's the actual person's head is at the top. So what do you do here? Because you don't want to make the cat's face any bigger. Okay, so I'm going to make the opacity back to 100 there. So now we're going to cover up this little piece here, right? So what I'm going to do is go to the underneath layer, and I'm going to do the eyedropper tool. I'm going to take a sample of that color right around the person's head, and then I'm going to take the brush now. With my brush, the hardness is down to 0. So it's very, very soft now. And I'm going to paint very softly in behind it. And then you can also paint around it just to sort of touch it up. Whoops, I got the color there a little bit. So that's basically how you clean up the image behind the head. You can see without the cat's head there, it looks kind of ridiculous, right? But with the cat's head over top, nobody would ever know. Now I'm going to zoom back out to full screen, and you can see relatively easily I've put a cat's face on a human's body. Now you could make the cat's face bigger if you wanted, or you could chop off this portrait and you could just have just the top. I'm not a huge fan of having a full body portrait. It kind of looks weird, but a half portrait with a cat just looks so ridiculous that you can't help but smile when you see it. The second method is taking a photograph of a cat or a dog or your favorite family pet and then making an oil painting from it using filters. So the idea is you take it, you run it through an online filter, and then you get a really nice artistic looking picture that you can then sell as a printable or as a print-on-demand product. The site that I'm using for the oil paintings is lunapic.com. I'm simply going to upload a file and then apply a filter to it. So here I'm going to select the browse button to upload off my computer. And then we can see here's the full picture. And then I'm just going to go up to art and I'm going to just pick one of these art filters. So if I pick Picasso, for example, it's going to think about it and then it's going to return a result that is Picasso-esque and it looks like an art portrait. So there it is. Just took me seconds to do. Now I can hit the back button and I can try another one. I can go art and I can go watercolor, for example. And we can see there's an art picture. So again, your mileage may vary depending on the original photograph. If your photograph is not high quality, or if there's a lot of different colors, or if it's a lot of white, it may not come out. So you want to experiment. Ask your client for 2 or 3 or 4 different pictures, photographs, and then you can run them through the filter and you can see which ones work the best. And Lunapic's got a ton of different effects, and they're actually cumulative. So for example, I've applied this art filter. I could also go in and I could apply another filter on top of it. I'm not saying it's going to look good, but you could apply filters on top of filters and you can basically build a really unique looking portrait based on multiple filters. To save it, just go to the left-hand side, hit the save button, and then you can save the image. It's very easy to use. The third option is actually really fun to do. You can make a magazine or a comic book cover using your favorite feline or canine friend. So here I've got a picture of a cat, and then what you do is you get a magazine template, or you make a magazine template, and then you put the cat on the cover of the magazine template. Now you're not actually making a magazine in this case, but you're creating a print, like a 11 by 17 or an 8.5 by 11 picture, and then they can print, the customer can print it and they can put it up on their wall, they can frame it, and it looks like a magazine cover. Okay, so if you're looking for a magazine cover to use as an example, I'm on a site here called Creative Fabrica that I love, and I'm just going to type in the word magazine template, and we can see what comes back. We can see there's different magazine templates that they sell on Creative Fabrica, and it's not very expensive. Sometimes they're 50 cents, a couple dollars, that kind of thing. Here's just an example of a magazine template that you could use. Now, I'd recommend making something like this in Photoshop yourself, but if you don't want to, you could certainly purchase a magazine template as well. So here's an example of a magazine template that I purchased off of Creative Fabrica, and it's just basically a Photoshop file, and it's got a bunch of layers sitting inside it, so I can expand out these layers, and then you can basically just turn these layers off and on as you want. So I'm just selecting the little eyeball, and you can select text, you can import text, and you can basically use this as a basis to create your own magazine cover. This is the magazine cover that I made. And again, I just simplified it a bit. I stuck my picture of my cat on there. I named it myself, named the cat, typed in the text, and then I just made something funny down at the bottom. You could add in a UPC code, like a barcode. You could name the cat, whatever the cat is. But the idea is you're customizing it for your client so that they can print this off and they can put this on the wall, and it makes a funny bathroom print, or it looks great in a den, and it's so customized for the client. The fourth print product can be extremely lucrative, but it does involve some capital, and it's a physical engraving product. So here, as an example, you would get a photograph of the client's pet, and then you would engrave that onto metal or wood, and then you would sell that back to the customer. Here's an example of one of those engraving machines. I just went onto Amazon. Now this is Canadian dollars, so you can do the math if you're in the United States or Great Britain or wherever else. This is about 600 Canadian dollars. That would be about 500 US dollars. And this is an engraving machine where you would take a photograph and then you can engrave it onto an item like wood or metal. Here's an example of what you could sell on Etsy. So this is a seller called Celestial by AJ. They're on Etsy and they're selling this for $36.74 Canadian, and they're selling engraved little necklaces. And as you can see, Celestial's doing all right. They've got over 21,000 sales. Now that's not only this product, mind you, but this product's part of what makes up their over 20,000 in sales. Here's another example. This is Caitlin Minimalist, 1.6 million sales in this store. And they've got keychains where they've engraved a family, pet's photo onto the keychain, and they're selling this for a little under $40 Canadian as well. That's a fantastic and easy to ship item too. It's robust and it's lightweight. Here's another one. This is Bijou Boutique. This is 17,000 sales. Dog photo ring, $34. And again, they're taking a photograph and then they're engraving it and then they're making a physical item and then they're shipping it to the customer. I think this is a great idea, and you can make unique items. So even if it's a crowded marketplace, somebody somewhere could want your item. The fifth pet product I want to cover is making some sort of a wanted poster or a mugshot. So it's pretty easy to do. Again, you're just going to take a photograph of your dog or your cat. So in this case, here's my example of my dog. And then I'm going to make a wanted poster with it. And the idea is you just sort of posterize the dog using Photoshop, and then you can make an easy to use and reusable wanted poster. You can make all sorts of different genres, for example. So here's another one. Here's a dog, and what you can do is you can take stock photos of the paws. So you can have the paws sort of overlapping. And the reason I mentioned this will become apparent in a couple seconds. There's going to be a sign underneath it. And so here you can see there's a mug shot of the dog. So I actually just got this template and then I made this in about 2 minutes. It's very easy to do, and it's funny, and it's quite lucrative because if you don't know how to do Photoshop or Affinity Photo, people are willing to pay good money for something that can take you 5 to 10 minutes of work. So a wanted poster is pretty easy to make. Basically, you're just putting in a vintage piece of paper over top of your template, and then you're typing in the word wanted. You can use any sort of font, but a Western font typically would be better. And then I like to add in stars. I think they look really nice, so I've got some stars. I've got a huge utility folder, by the way, on my computer that's got all sorts of hearts, stars, lots of different numbers, things that are like designs that are utility designs that I use again and again. And then I would add in something funny at the bottom, and then I'll just add in a picture of the dog. So there's our wanted criminal right here. And then what you can do is you can posterize this. So again, using Affinity Photo or Photoshop, there's all sorts of different ways you can do it, but I'm just going to rasterize this layer, and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then I'm going to go to Posterize. And then really what it does is you can add in different levels. So you can do 10 levels, and that makes it almost look the same. You can do 2 levels, and that really only looks at 2 kinds of color. I'm going to use 4, and that's going to sort of make it look a bit cartoony, and I'm going to stick that now on my poster. So that's it. I mean, the whole thing can take you, less than 5 minutes, but you can make it as detailed as you want. The novelty is that the client's getting a picture of their animal on here. So you don't want to sell this with just a random animal. The whole point is to sell it to the client with their animal on it. And when you do that, the sky is really the limit. So a wanted poster is pretty straightforward, but so is a mugshot. So I purchased this mugshot off of Creative Fabrica, this background, and you can see it's just sort of a height chart. And then from there, I added in a black box, and then I put in some actual text, and then I've got the picture of the dog in there as well. Now again, if your dog isn't going to cooperate and put his paws up, what you can do is you can just find a stock image of a dog, and then using the magic of Photoshop, you can just take the paws. So you can delete out the remainder of the dog, just keeping the paws. So I could just do this, for example, and just remove out the remainder of the dog. And then I can insert a different dog. Now I do want to point out the dogs really should match, like you should match up the size and stuff. It's not easy always to do. It does depend on obviously the breed and the size of the dog and the hair. So you would want to have like an inventory of like paw prints and stuff of different colors, or you'd want to modify the color here. So I'm going to put this dog picture down at the bottom like this. And then I'm going to change using the little eyedropper. I'm going to pick the color, and then I'm going to color in using the paintbrush. I'm going to color in the actual paw prints. So I actually didn't use the paintbrush tool. What I'm doing instead is I'm using a feature here called the hue and the saturation. And so using that, I'm making the paw prints now stand out. Now again, it's a different dog, right? Remember I had a different dog there before, but I would take my time, and again, I would try to match it up as closely as possible. And you can insert different animals in there as long as you've got the right paw prints. I really hope you found this walkthrough helpful. This is a big picture overview video on the niche itself. And if you'd like a greater deep dive into how I made any of the individual designs, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to do more deep dive videos if that's what the demand is, if that's what people are asking for. I just absolutely love this genre, and you can make some great sales. And even if you're first starting out, here you can see there's a local seller, 17 sales, $20 for a neat looking pencil. And that's a beautiful portrait because it doesn't have to be exactly the same. It just needs to be your voice as an artist. And that looks really cool too. So there's lots of opportunities here for you to shine as an artist. Oh, and by the way, look at this on Etsy. Other people want this. Over 20 people have this in their basket. $59, 538 sales. This person's doing a great job, and they're a relatively new artist as well. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. And here's another video on how you can supercharge your artistic skills in different niches. Thanks a lot for watching.